All right, I got some more questions this week, and this one's from Dr. JWR. It says, thanks for this, Rob. How do I get the histogram on the LCD screen? I'm not talking about looking at a photograph, but before the photograph is taken, I have looked all over the menu and I can't find it. Thank you. So I actually pointed you to a video where I showed you how to get the histogram on the screen, but you said you did that and you're still not seeing it. So I think you're missing one additional step, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear in the other video, but I'll show you here right now. All right, so I'm going to quickly go over the basics here. So let's go into the menu, and we're going to go over here to the setup menu, and then we're going to go over here to page 4, and we want to select camera info settings. So this is the information we'll see on the back of our LiveView. So we'll click OK here, and we can select if we want to see the image only. So let's just check that for demonstration. Information 1 panel is grayed out because that's what we're actually using right now, but we can still make changes here. And if I click over to the right, you'll see that the histogram, highlight and shadow information, level gauge, etc., none of these are checked. So all we have to do is check the histogram. And let's go back out. And then let's go over here to information 3 because that's also checked. And I have this set to level gauge. All right, so let's go back out to the live view, and you can see the histogram is now displaying because we're on information panel 1. If I lift it up, you can see the histogram is here. But I think what your problem is that you're on maybe information panel 3 that has the level gauges. So to see the histogram that was in information panel 1, you have to hit the info button, and this will step through each of the different information panels. So this is the image only panel. We'll click info again. Now we're on information panel 1 that has the histogram. And if I click it again, we're back to information panel 3. So going back to the camera info settings, you can see we have image only, information panel 1, and information panel 3 is now grayed out because that's where we left off. And I can add information panel 2, click over to the right, and just select everything, for example. Now, if I click the info button, we're on image only. This is the histogram, information panel 1. Information panel 2, which has everything, histogram, level gauge, touch screen, I can't remember everything, but it's all here. Click info again, and now we're on level gauge only. And click info again, and we're back to image only. So hopefully that fixes the issue. If not, just let me know in the comments below and we'll try again. All right, this one is from Joe, and he says, I recently broke my right shoulder, which means I can't really take photos, especially with the flagship cameras with ergonomics built for the right hand. So true, and I'm so sorry to hear about your shoulder. Do you know any tips or cameras that'll make photography easier with my left hand while I recover and heal? So I'm not really aware of any flagship cameras that are left-handed. I mean, there are some ambidextrous type cameras, but they're typically like vlogging cameras or toy cameras, and that's not what you want. You want like a decent camera or a flagship camera. And the only solution I could come up with really was doing something like this, where I attached a tabletop tripod, and to the tripod I attached a, in this case it's a wireless remote, but it could certainly be a wired remote, where it gives you at least access to the shutter button with your left hand. So what you would do is just kind of hold your camera like this, and then you can bring it up to your eye, half press the shutter button to autofocus and recompose if you want, then fully press to take the picture. But this only solves the problem of accessing the shutter, right? All the other buttons and everything are still, out of reach for left-handed people. So what you'd have to do is because this is a tabletop type tripod, you can have it, you can set it down. You can kind of spread it out with your hand, left hand this way, and then set it down on the table. And then in which case, now you have your left hand to access the buttons and the dials. So you also may want to customize, like set up custom settings C1, 2, 3, 4, for example, before you go out to settings that you would typically use. Otherwise, you're going to be going into the menu and pushing a lot of buttons, which is a little bit awkward with your left hand, I'm sure. But that's really the only solution I could think of. If anyone else has solutions that he can use, please leave them down in the comments below so that, you know, he can get some good ideas, because this was the only one I could come up with. And this trigger, this is just a wireless remote. This is a Pixel Pro TW283. I use this as an intervalometer and all kinds of other things. And if you get the wired one, it's a lot cheaper and smaller, right? They have smaller ones that are wired, and you can just plug that into the camera. Depending on what camera you have, you would have to get the right cable and stuff. But hopefully that helps you a little bit to keep you going with your photography. All right, this question is from Remus from Spain. He says, I have a question for you about the custom button function. I set the right arrow key to deactivate the AF function to MF and vice versa. I was using it on my EM1 Mark II and I liked it. Now in my new OM-1, the function button works fine, but if I turn off the camera or if I change the lens, this custom button function is not working anymore. And I have to go back to the control panel and choose SAF or MF because the right arrow key is not working. Any help with this issue? All right, so let me see if I understand the problem. We'll go into the menu, go into button settings, button function, go down here, and we're going to assign the D-pad to be a function or direct function. And then move it on here, and we're going to assign the right arrow to be manual focus. I mean, this can be assigned to anything, but you assign this to manual focus. So the idea being is right now we're in SAF. If you click the right button here or the D-pad, you go into manual focus, and you can kind of toggle back and forth like this between manual focus and single autofocus or whatever focusing you choose. And the problem you're having is, you said when you turn off the camera and turn it on, that this stops working. However, you can see on my camera, it is working, but I was able to duplicate your issue. So let me show you. I'm going to turn off the camera and turn it on. And now this D-pad is not acting or toggling between SAF and manual focus. So what I have to do, or what you're doing, is going into here, changing it to say SAF again, like that, and now it's working again, right? And the same thing happens when you change lenses. I'm going to assume you're turning the camera off when you're changing lenses. But if you change lenses before turning the camera off, I'm not having that issue. However, if I turn the camera off, change lenses, and turn it back on, then I run into this problem again, right? And I have to go into and change this, and now we're back to this button working. As you can see, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and I think there's a glitch in the firmware, something they overlook that they used to do in the previous models, the EM1s, and I also checked my EM5 Mark III, which we know is basically an EM1 Mark II. I didn't have any issues like that, but the OM1 does. So OM Systems needs to fix this in the next firmware update. It's a very small thing, but basically what's happening is the camera remembers the very last state of autofocus that you were in. So if you leave it in SAF and then turn the camera off and turn back on again, that button will work just fine because it's toggling between SAF, the most recent state, and MF, which is the program state. And then you hit it again, it goes back to the recent state, back to the program state. However, if you put it into manual focus and you turn off the camera and then you turn it back on, the most recent state now is manual focus because that's what you left it at when you turn the camera off. So now it's just toggling between manual focus and most recent state manual focus back and forth. So it looks like nothing's happening, but it probably is actually toggling between manual focus program state and manual focus recent state. And that's why you have to go into the control panel and change the most recent state to SAF, if that makes sense. So I'll just demonstrate one more time to show you. So as you can see, we're in SAF, and if I toggle the D button, I can go back and forth between MF and SAF. So I'm going to put it into SAF, turn off the camera, turn it back on, and this is still working. So that should be the case for you as well. However, if I leave it in MF and turn off the camera, swap lenses, do whatever, turn it back on, now the most recent state has been updated to MF. So when I toggle back and forth, it's just toggling between recent state MF and program state into this button MF. So this is the problem, I think. And then another problem I discovered was, let's put this back into SAF. And I'm going to just go into quick sleep mode. So right now we're in SAF, right? So now the camera's gone to sleep. I'll wake it back up. And this button is still working. But I'm going to leave it in MF and let the camera go to sleep. Then we wake it back up. And now it's toggling between the recent state MF and the program state MF. So again, my EM5 Mark III doesn't do that. All right, here's my EM5, and as you can see, I can toggle between SAF and MF. So I'm going to leave it in MF, turn off the camera, turn it back on, and it's in MF, but I can still toggle back to SAF. And if I put it into quick sleep mode, let it go to sleep, wake it back up, I can still toggle. So we'll leave it in MF and let it go to sleep, wake it back up, and no issues there. So this is definitely a problem that did not exist in the previous EM1s and EM5s. So OM systems, you definitely need to fix this in the next firmware update so that the last autofocus state gets remembered, whether the camera gets turned off or if it goes to sleep, because either of those conditions seems to trigger this little bug. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for your questions. And if you find these videos helpful, consider supporting the channel by buying me a coffee or making a donation. The links below, because they help me to continue making videos like this and they are greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.